Hey Mick Warriors, welcome to Bad Ben's Battletech. I am Bad Ben, and today I am an explorer. Part of the Explorer Corps out in my jump ship, ready to do a solar system survey. Find out what kind of planets we have. We're going to take things like diameter and density, day length, gravity, do a solar survey, a habitable planet survey, all this good stuff. But yeah, in all seriousness, today we are going to be looking at the solar system generation section of campaign operations. It's a bit of a infamous section in the Battletech world, I would say. As far as I know, as far as I've seen, it is the most math intensive. But yeah, it's not bad. It's not insurmountable. I figured it out, and I'm here to bring you along to do this today. Well, in this video, it's just going to be the intro. This is going to be a series of videos. Today is going to be the intro, and I will be going over, for example, what you're going to need to be able to follow along and do this with me. What kind of data we will be recording, the steps we'll take to do all of it, and finally talk about why you would ever want to do this in the first place. So yeah, as I said, it is going to be slightly math heavy. I would say no worse than high school math, really. Don't be too intimidated. I think it's fun. I enjoy it, actually. I have to say, I kind of like math. But, this is Battletech, and I think Battletech actually attracts kind of math heads. It's a bit of a math heavy game in the first place. So, yeah, without further ado, we'll get in straight to it. What are you going to need to follow along with this? First of all, you need a copy of Campaign Operations. You need to have that yourself and have it open and follow along. It doesn't matter if it's the book or the PDF, they're both identical. But you need to have that because I'm not going to be flipping back and forth to the book all the time. I find that's annoying to do. And it's also kind of disrespectful to Catalyst Game Labs, who's put so much time and effort into making this book. You should go and buy it yourself. I'm not just going to show everything. You're going to need a spreadsheet of some sort. This is my spreadsheet. You can open a spreadsheet now and follow along with everything that we do and copy it, so that you have all of the, all of this stuff ready to go for when we actually start to build it. You're going to need a scientific calculator. It needs to be a scientific calculator. We are going to be multiplying by fractional exponents, and regular calculators don't do that, and I doubt you can do that by hand. And if you can do that by hand, you definitely don't need to be watching this video. And lastly, you'll probably need just a pencil and a piece of paper, just to jot down some numbers in some of the equations, in between. Stuff we're not going to be recording on this sheet here. Yeah, so that's what you're going to need if you want to do this. And yeah, we'll just move along. And what are we going to be recording? How much data? What kind of things? I already showed you a whole lot. We'll go up here. I'll explain each one a little bit. So orbital slot. We're going to be rolling for orbital slots, and this tells you how many objects can be in your system. Most likely they'll be planets, but they don't have to be planets. They can also be asteroids or empty as well. But we will record the orbital slot number here. All right. The way this works, it is possible to get 15 orbital slots. That's the maximum size for a solar system that we can build using these rules. You can build a bigger one if you want. Just say I have 20 orbital slots. But then there's a lot of missing information that you won't have. So 15 and 15 is enough. Trust me. It's a lot of work. Just doing a 7 planet system is enough. So secondly, we have type. This is where we record what is in our orbital slot. And that can be asteroid belt. It can be a dwarf terrestrial. It can be a regular terrestrial, just called terrestrial. It can be a giant terrestrial. It could be a gas giant. It could be an ice giant. Or it could be empty, depending on what we roll. Distance. Distance is recorded in astronomical units. That's a very important piece of data that we're going to use for a lot of the other calculations. It's very simple to figure out. It's very little math to figure out distance. Life zone, this will just record, is the planet in the habitable zone of the star? And that's important to see later on, do we have any habitable planets? But it's also important to know where the inner solar system starts and where the outer solar system starts. Diameter. This is something we're going to roll for to see the diameter of each planet that we have in our system. It's a roll with modifiers for sure. There is math involved in the rolling of diameter. Same goes for density, right? The density is grams per centimeter squared. You need to know this for other calculations that will come later. This is another thing that we roll for with modifiers. Day length also is another roll with modifiers to find out how long it takes each object to spin around itself, how long its day is. Gravity. This is not something you roll for. This is something you figure out from the numbers that you've rolled. We'll be doing gravity for every object except for asteroid belts. You don't need to find out the gravity of an asteroid belt. That really doesn't make sense. And it is going to be measured in relation to the Earth. So you will have things like 1.1 or 0.3, or I've had it very low, even 0.01, and that would be 0.01 times Earth's gravity, or 1.2 times Earth gravity, or for some of the bigger gas giants, they get up to 2 or 3 Earth gravities, something like that. Escape velocity. This is something we don't have to calculate for every single planet. Only terrestrial planets that might have an atmosphere are going to be... I'll do all the terrestrial planets that we have, but gas giants, ice giants, asteroid belts, you absolutely don't need to know the escape velocity of those. This isn't only important for, in the game, First of all, I don't know why that would escape velocity from a planet would ever come into a BattleTech game, possibly in campaign operations, but you'd need to know a lot of other stuff, like the power of your jump ship and so on, or drop ship and so on. But it's actually important to calculate later on the surface water. So how much surface water do we have on on any habitable planets that we might have, and also used to calculate how much atmospheric pressure on any terrestrial planets. Not all terrestrial planets will have an atmosphere for us to, calculate, but that's what it is. Year length. So how long does it take to go around its own sun? That will be measured in Earth years. And that can go down to like 0.1, and it can go as high as like 250 for the really far out planets. Asteroid population. Now this whole section is only important for asteroids. Asteroid belts. All the other planets will just get an A, an A, an A. And if you look here, it have DT/M/S. And what that means is dwarf terrestrials, medium, and small. So a dwarf terrestrial is something like Pluto, for example, and asteroid belts can have dwarf terrestrials in them. This will record how many of those, how many medium asteroids we have, and how many small asteroids. Smalls will be upwards of 1 million or in the many millions. Medium will be, 200 to, I don't know, 1,000 maybe. I don't know what the upper limits are. Dwarf terrestrials, the max I think I've ever had is 4 or 5, maybe. Quite low, so you don't get many dwarf terrestrials in your asteroid belts. Then we move on to moons. And moons aren't just recorded like how many moons does a planet have. Oh no. It goes into more detail than that. It will tell you how many giant moons, how many large moons, how many medium moons, and how many small moons. This is going to be rolled. Asteroid population is not really rolled. There is a roll involved in asteroid population. That's true. No, there is a roll, but there's actually quite a lot of math that goes into finding this. This is rolls with modifiers for each type of planet. So, a terrestrial will have different rolls to gas giant or an ice giant. And that makes sense because terrestrial planets might only have 1 or 2 or 3 moons, whereas ice giants can get in, or gas giants can get in the 20s of moons, mostly small. Anyways, moving on, we have rings. Does the planet have rings or not? And that's done at the same time as moons. You roll for rings. Atmospheric pressure. Atmospheric pressure is another roll with many modifiers that we will only be doing for terrestrial planets, because I think the atmospheric pressure on gas giants can be extremely high. I believe. I don't really know, but we don't worry about that. We're never going to land on a gas giant, so you don't really need to know the atmospheric pressure. Is the planet habitable? This, yes, no. That's an easy one. And temperature. Temperature is actually kind of a weird one. We will be able to do the temperature for all worlds, all uninhabitable worlds. And then we will also be able to do pressure for any habitable worlds but it's a different process, and you have to use different tables to do each one. So this one gets filled out a little differently. And gas giants, ice giants, we don't care about the temperature. Apparently, they're many thousands of degrees in temperature and beyond the scope of campaign operations. So that's all of the data that we'll be recording about the solar system objects. Well, not all of the information. Solar, I call them surveys because I think of myself as an explorer going and seeing what kind of star have I found, not generating it. This is actually going to be the first thing that we fill out on this, and there's no math involved. It's strictly copying from a book, but I find it's very useful to have all this information here instead of having to go back to the table, find your star, go to the right column to find the information. We'll just simply copy all this information into here first. Next table over, habitable planet survey. So yeah, I've left 3 spaces for habitable planets. I don't know if it's possible to get 3 habitable planets. I've only ever seen 1 habitable planet per system. I'm sure it is possible, but I believe that I don't know this for sure. The life zone of a star, so where it's possible to have life, doesn't usually cover more than 2 planets, as far as I've seen. It's probably possible that it could cover more than 2, and you get 3. I really don't know. I haven't done every type of star and so on, but so I've got 3 spaces, and here we will be recording its orbital slot. So which slot is it in? The temperature. This temperature is just going to be something like low, medium, or low, normal, high, very high. Maybe there's a very low. That's going to be different than this temperature at the end over here, which is going to be in Kelvin. But we need to find out this temperature before we can put the temperature in Kelvin up on this table. I'm going to roll for surface water, atmosphere. This will be like breathable, tainted, or toxic. And yes, you can have a habitable planet with a toxic atmosphere. It only means everybody there needs to wear a breathing apparatus whenever they go outside and live in domes. And I believe that that is actually represented in the Battletech universe somewhere in some of the stories. I don't know. So that is possible. Continents. How many continents? The highest. That's literally, I think, just a 1d6 roll. There are some modifiers depending on what kind of planet you have, but that is going to be near the end. Highest life form will be recorded here, and that'll be something like reptile, amphibian, insects, or microbes. I think there's birds, and the book goes on into detail that it's not actually that there's just birds like on Earth. It would be something of equal development to birds, but could be still totally alien. It really, you can go and read that yourself. Terrain. This is just something that you will be able to fill out yourself based on based on surface, water, and temperature. It will tell you and you're going to get things like savanna, plains, jungle, swamp, forest, desert, and you'll get multiple. It's not just going to be, you're not going to make a desert planet. And they actually go into detail in the book, like saying desert planets don't even exist. It would always be varied in some way. Yes, special features. That's something that we'll roll for later, and that can be really cool. This is going to be things like Star League, a forgotten Star League cache, or a forgotten colony, or what else do they have? Natural disasters, or a lava planet. The special feature can actually be rolled for any planet. You can roll a special feature on any of the planets that you make. It's going to have to be adapted somehow. If you roll Lost Colony on a gas giant, then maybe it's going to be something more like a Lost Colony ship orbiting a gas giant, for example. You can do that. I only have one. I'm not going to do all special features for planets, and it's not sure. You have to roll to see first if you get a special feature, and then roll to see what it is. Under here we have a couple of things. Life zone position modifier. This is a useful number that we're going to use in multiple dice rolls for things like surface water and temperature and so on. And it's good just to have those numbers so you don't have to recalculate them all the time. Same escape velocity modifier is also, it's exactly the same as this. It's used in several of the calculations here. And that will be the information that we get on a habitable planet. And here I have an atmospheric survey. This is only going to be for uninhabitable, I can't even say that word, uninhabitable planets. Any habitable planet, you're going to assume that the atmosphere is made up of things like ours here. I guess if you do get a habitable planet that's toxic, maybe you can then roll on the atmospheric survey. And yeah, so we're going to roll for a bunch of numbers just for any planets. And this is it. You might be that you don't get any planets that you can do an atmospheric survey on, because it has to, first of all, it needs to have an atmosphere. We need to roll to see if things have an atmosphere at all. Or, for example, with giant terrestrials, they only have a 1 in 6 chance of having an atmosphere. Otherwise, they are going to be considered gas giants. And then you don't do an atmospheric survey on. And yeah, that covers all of the data that we'll be collecting. It's pretty detailed, actually. It's an really, really impressive section of the book, I have to say. Just the scope of it, and how they made all of the modifiers that they made to make it possible to roll a solar system on dice it's amazing. It's amazing. And you should read the entire chapter for yourself. There's so much more information that they go over. That isn't even part of this. It's that won't even ever be recorded. Just extra information about astronomy, basically about our solar systems, and they're very aware that this isn't accurate. And they in the book they write very clearly this isn't going to be a scientifically accurate solar system. It's going to be useful for play in BattleTech, and that's fine. That's fine. But like, there's so much information here that isn't useful in BattleTech play. You know, for example, the population of the asteroid belt. When in BattleTech will you ever go visit an asteroid? Maybe you will. And then knowing the population is important. It's really neat. Like, even moons, you don't even need moons, but they have it in here. They have it. It's very impressive. So now we're going to just quickly go over this cheat sheet that I've made to show you the steps that we're going to take, what order it goes in. And just to warn you, I don't go in order of the book. I've changed it up a bit so that I roll as much as I can first. And then I'll go back and do the calculations that are dependent on those rolls. And that's not really the order that the book uses, but it's a good way. So the number one, we're going to roll for the primary star. Number two, we're just going to record all of our information. Number three, we'll roll orbital slots. That'll be how many orbital slots. Number four is we will calculate the distance in astronomical units of each slot. And you can see the calculation I have here. We're going to note where the life zone planets, even before we have the planets, we will know where the life zone is. Then we will roll objects and the different statistics. For example, the density, the diameter, the day length is all in this step here, page 103. Then we're going to go, this is where I skip a whole bunch of stuff, calculating gravity and year length and so on, and I go straight to rolling my asteroid populations. You can see it's got this is just a multiplier for a dice roll. So you can see a bit of the math. You're going to have 1d6 divided by 3 squared, multiplied by the belt's orbits in astronomical units divided by 2.8. And that will give you a multiplier that we put onto our dice roll. After that, we will roll for moons and rings. After that, I will talk about distribution of moons. We are not going to record the position of every single moon around every single planet. We will have possibly hundreds, or it can get very high. And I definitely don't want to. It's completely useless information. I'm not going to say, I don't spend my time. I think of this, you can do this when you visit a moon. If you feel like visiting a moon, then you can find out its exact position around the planet, blah, blah, blah. So on and so forth. Then we're going to go on. Then we get into some of the calculations. This is where some of the heavier calculations come in. We are going to calculate the gravity. We're going to calculate the escape velocity for terrestrials only. We're going to calculate the year length. Just to let you know, there's actually two different equations for year length. This is the easier one. Pick the easier one. Just pick the easier one. It's fine. It gives you a year length. We don't need to punish ourselves. Then we need to calculate the escape velocity modifier for terrestrials only. We need to then roll for our atmospheric pressure. This will be for all terrestrials that do have an atmosphere. Or I think in this step we will find out whether or not they do have an atmosphere. Then we can calculate the temperature, terrestrials only, and I put a whole, there's actually more math than just this. So yeah. Then we'll do our uninhabitable world's atmospheric composition. What is the atmosphere made out of? Then we will calculate the life zone position modifier. Important for all the dice rolls that we're going to do on our habitable planets. Roll for surface water percentage, how much of the planet is covered in water. Roll atmosphere. This is where you find out whether your habitable planet has a breathable or a toxic or just a tainted atmosphere. We roll temperature. See, for our habitable world. So this, when we had another thing that said calculate temperature up here, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. But we can't record that for our habitable worlds until we roll for it. We just don't know. Roll the highest life form. Then it's just describing terrain. This is literally no math. This is just looking at what kind of planet do I have and describing the terrain that you have. You can roll for continents. And finally, last but not least, we will roll for special features. Yeah, it looks daunting, but it's going to be several different videos. In the next video, we're going to do the rolls. We are simply going to be doing all of the rolls. It won't have super heavy math in it, just a few modifiers that we have to calculate. I'll, however, need a scientific calculator to do it. Then, in the next video, we're going to go on and do the calculations based on the numbers that we rolled. And then I hope the last video we can do habitable planet, and possibly in that one too, this atmospheric survey. I don't know when exactly we will do this. We will. Habitable planet will be the last video in this series. Hopefully. Maybe I'll put an outro video on the very end. Yeah. But then we'll move on to the last thing I want to say. Why do this at all? It is absolutely unnecessary in Battletech. You do not need to do this ever. There are thousands and thousands of systems already ready to be used in the inner sphere that are already described, but I do it because it's fun. I like it. I role play an explorer in the Explorer Corps. Every time I roll my dice, the sensor data is coming back and telling me what kind of planet have I found, like I said, I kind of like math. I like it because it's challenging. I like the fact that this is maybe one of the most difficult things, if not the most difficult thing you can do in the Battletech universe. And lastly, I don't know. Lastly, do it because it's fun and challenging, and you can roleplay with it, or don't do it, and that's fine too. So I hope you have a bit of a better understanding of what is going to be in the series and how we're going to be doing it, the scope of it, this will, let you know if you want to do this at all. Yeah, so join me in my next video and we will actually get started into filling some of this data out. Thanks for watching. See you later.